All right, we'll call this meeting to order. This is a workshop, Liberty County Commissioners Court workshop, February 7th. It's about almost 2:30. It's 2:24, close enough. And we have a topic we're going to get to discuss with Melinda Soliday for permits and inspections, and also with our engineering firm, LJA. They're also here as well. Discussion on 4, development of rules regarding pumped detention use in Liberty County subdivisions. Pump detention is something somewhat new to us. Usually we have gravity flow. Now we have pump flow. Is that kind of the way y'all look at it, fellas?
Yeah, there will never be security pump flow. So that's what they're looking for, is a combination of pump flow and gravity. You had just gravity flow before.
Okay.
So we're essentially looking for a combination.
Come on up and y'all tell the world who you are. And that way, anybody that's watching, they're going to be watching, believe it. And everyone know who you are and who you work with. And don't be shy.
You're now in. Manuel Mendoza, LJ Engineering. Cody Kroll is here with me as well.
Okay. So the question is it going to be allowed, Melinda? And if so, what are there going to be any restrictions on the use of it, correct?
Well, our current regs are pretty vague when it covers this.
Yeah.
I gave you copies of what are in our current regulations. That's what LJ has brought some pages to look at to what they're proposing to do. My biggest problem on my side is the maintenance. Not so much, you know, the design regs and all that, that's all going to be checked by LJA. But the maintenance, who's going to be responsible? What kind of guidelines are we going to have? What are we going to require for the detention facilities exactly? This is something totally new to Liberty County, and I, for one, have never dealt with it. So
Well, it's one thing to put it in. Yeah.
Right.
It's another thing to take care of it through a perpetuity.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's my, 20 years down the road when we're no longer here, what's going to happen to the county with this pump detention?
Okay. Manuel, what's your recommendations? Or Cody, either one, y'all.
Well, before I get to a recommendation, I just want to point out that, as your engineer, we feel like there really is no benefit to allowing pump detention to the county.
You say there is or is not?
There's not a benefit to the county. The only benefit would be to the developer, because it allows them to have a smaller footprint and go deeper. Once they go deeper, then they can't gravity outflow out. So the only benefit to allowing it is really, they can have a smaller pond and more lots to sell. It doesn't benefit at all in any, but it has the downside of potentially years from now, who's responsible for maintaining this if the developer HOA does not do it? So to me, there's downside for y'all and no upside. So I don't think this is going to deter development. If they want to develop in Liberty County, they will. They'll just put in a gravity pond if that's all they can do. So to me, I just want to make sure that you understand that our side of it is there's downside for the county in the future, possibly, and there's really no upside. The only upside would be to, facilitate developers' concerns that they want to have pump detention if you want to allow it or not. So it doesn't help you at all.
Well, if a developer does not have an HOA, would be almost impossible to track them down 20 years from now.
Again, that's something that we would need legal counsel to look into. I think even in the recommendation, it's not even 20 years from now of, who's going to be getting a call when it's storming out there and starts flooding and there's no HOA? They're going to call the county because that's who the homeowner thinks is responsible, even though you may not be responsible for it. So we wanted to have always on hand an idea of who is responsible. It needs to be in some information somewhere.
Okay,
I just want to, these are, our colleagues from LJA. They're gonna be more involved with your master plan. They
okay,
wanted to attend this meeting, so they could find out what's going on with the regulations. Part of the scope of the master plan is a development of a drainage criteria manual.
Okay.
Which will be kind of in hand with, revisions to the subdivision regulation. So they wanted to, attend this meeting.
yeah,
That's who they.
you only,
Haven't we
Since you're-
already allowed a variance?
while one of y'all is still standing, the other one said, why don't y'all walk over here and introduce yourselves?
Okay.
So Lee ought to know who you are. He's zooming
All right.
in with us.
Jessica Cooney, LJ, head of hydraulics.
Howdy, I'm William Conlon, stormwater engineer out of Houston, but be running the Liberty Master Plan, the GLO's
Yeah.
contracting. But
Okay.
So I hesitate to make a recommendation. Really, we can give you input, and I recommend that you just acknowledge that there's no benefit to you.
Yeah.
There's potential downside later, but you're only helping out the developer if you allow it.
Do you know if surrounding counties are using these?
I talked to, well, I know Orange County is, they don't want it. They're not prohibiting it outright, but they are highly discouraging the use of it. Hardin County is not allowing it at this time. Neither is Chambers County. I believe Harris County, y'all may know more about that. What's Harris County or Harris County Flood Control? They do allow it, right?
But they discourage it. Yes. And Galveston County is the same way. They'll allow it, but they discourage it.
I just don't see there's any way that we can control this down the road.
There is none.
And 13 failure to maintain is a violation. Well, who are we going to, what's the violation and who are we going to put it on?
Exactly. That's always gonna be the concern is who's,
Let me ask a question on this. If they start pumping, let's say it comes down to it and it has to start, pumps have to be turned on. Where's the water going?
it'll be going to the same downstream outfall that the gravity flow would go to. It's just, if they've designed a pond to where it's deeper than the gravity will allow it to flow downstream, now they've got to pump from a deeper level. So it's going to the same place that gravity flow would go to. They're just making a deeper pond is all it's for. Doing a deeper pond allows them to have a smaller footprint, which and would allow them to have more lots to sell.
Okay, so this water would not be pumped into the county ditches.
It could be if that's the outfall if their runoff is going to that area now, obviously there would be increased runoff from developing a site, but it could be going into a county ditch.
But when you got,
If that were to happen, we really wouldn't know what's been pumped into the county ditch. Number one, and number two, we would probably see some erosion. Fairly sizable erosion within the county ditches that I or one of these other commissioners will have to be attending to. Is that correct?
Well, if they're pumping directly into a county ditch as opposed to into a channel that would then flow into your ditch, we would probably require some erosion control measures, riprap or something within the county ditch, wherever that discharge is being put into the ditch. So I don't think we would just allow them to pump into the ditch and let it be stay earthen ditch if that's what it is, and it possibly cause erosion.
But it could possibly occur, correct?
It could, but I think we would handle that at the review process and identify that they are pumping directly into a county ditch, and that county ditch needs to be basically protected from erosion as part of their infrastructure implementation.
when you have a detention pond, when it reaches its maximum capacity, the water goes into our regular drainage system anyway, doesn't it?
Yes, there would be required an emergency overflow, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't start spilling out on all sides and
Yeah.
flooding homes or anything.
When it reaches that point, It's going in our natural drainage system anyway. Ditches,
It's either a
channels.
natural system or a man-made roadside ditch
Yeah.
or whatever, that eventually probably does go to a natural system.
But it's not going into our road ditches, Greg. It's going into our outfall ditches, not a road ditches. That's what concerns me.
Some of the, at least one of the developments we reviewed before, they have proposed a pond that their discharge point would be right into a county ditch. I don't think there's any regulations that prohibit that. Because if that site is currently sheet flowing or discharging into that roadside ditch now, and they're improving it with roads and homes in impervious areas, they're proposing to put it through that same water course, even if it is a roadside ditch.
Yeah.
It would be mitigated through a pond, so the flow would be no higher than it was before.
Yeah,
That's the whole point of a detention pond.
Can I add something?
Yes, feel free.
The detention pond, of course, takes developed flows, retains it, reduces it back to its undeveloped state. The pump configuration, a pump is usually a really small flow because they're not putting in giant flows to
Yeah.
completely wash out something. And the combined flow between the gravity and the pump is still less than their allowable release rate. The pond that is pumped will be designed to where gravity still has relief. And if the channel is up high and it's full, there's float sensors that will not allow the pumps to kick on while the channel's full. So the fear of, and I'm not trying to advocate for it, trust me, I'm just.
no, that's what we're,
The float controls are set up to where the pumps are not on while the channel's full. And they only turn on when the channel recedes and the pond is still full of water. And it's meant to get that bottom half of the pond out. The top half still has a pipe, a box, a weir of some sort to gravity into the channel, like it would if it was a dry pond, a normal pond. What the pump gives you is a chance to deepen the pond, reduce your footprint,
yeah,
and have half of the volume is our the initial recommendation is half of that volume is below the gravity elevation. And that gets pumped out after the storm is over and everything's receded. The erosion is concerned because it is a point flow that has velocity. Energy dissipation, push it into a manhole, let the manhole become gravity sideways so the energy is lost in a concrete vault and then becomes gravity through a pipe is pretty normal. But again, a pump is a long-term maintenance nightmare. It's the hammer that you would have is more of a legal battle than an engineering battle.
yeah,
Anything can be solved, but a pump is a concern because of pump failure, pump exercising, power outage, sedimentation in the basin. Do you lose volume because that stuff drains so slow and you don't have the maintained volume below there?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of issues come with it, but the mechanics of a pumped pond are still regulated to where there's no increased peak flow from the existing condition. The pumps are usually small pumps. They're not, they're, half a CFS or 2 CFS. A normal 24-inch culvert is about 10 CFS in magnitude. So they're usually about a fifth of the volume that a 24-inch road culvert would have.
So on the downside, as 10 years, 20 years down the road, when the pumps do fail, because they are going to fail and there's no maintenance, it's going to revert back to a regular detention pond, but it's not big enough now to handle it.
Yes.
yeah.
At that point is only
Yeah.
half the volume.
Half the volume.
The way that I think Cody has suggested we work around that is and I'm gonna get sort of technical and I apologize for this. A detention rate is usually based on an acre foot per acre of development.
Mhm.
And Harris County, for simplicity's sake, is about 0.55 acre feet per acre. That was also before the Atlas 14 rainfall. I assume y'all are up to speed on that one.
Yep.
With Atlas 14's new rainfall amounts in the 100-year event, you start getting 0.6, 0.7 acre feet per acre of needed volume just because the rainfall is more rain in a approximate hypothetical 100-year event. So 0.7 acre feet per acre as a normal pond configuration. I think Cody, you suggested in the markup about 1 acre feet per acre. And Harris County's criteria is you can do 1 acre foot per acre with half of the volume provided at the gravity level. So again, if the pump fails and everything breaks, you still have a 0.5 acre foot per acre pond, which was good 5 years ago before I was 14.
Mhm.
Now that'd be undersized. There's ways to work around that to where if it does fail, you still have some basin. But you're requiring an over detention because of that factor of safety almost. You require 1 acre foot per acre, but half of it has to be gravity fed. You can pump out the bottom half after the storm recedes. Pumps fail, you still have half an acre, and then a really deep, wet lake. Who do you go after for the pumps? That's the hard part, you know, are they dedicated to a MUD, a HOA, some legal entity that y'all would have recourse against? Those are the kind of the big questions for pump acceptance.
So let me ask a question. So the pump system's installed and everything's going okay for a little while. Before you know it, the HOA is voted out. There's no more HOA. The developer decides that he's going out of business, going bankrupt. Then whose responsibility will it fall upon? Whose shoulders will it fall upon in order to handle all the maintenance, repairs, and running of that pump?
That's the problem of the pump system.
That's a legal question.
That is-
I'm concerned.
Downside, that's not an engineering question. That's the hardest part.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest
answer
hurdle
that
that every
for Leon?
county faces.
I don't know why we're even considering it.
Yeah, when, really, since it really doesn't affect the drainage, really, other than, you know, causing. Yeah, I'm not sure it's something we need to even consider at this point either.
I don't disagree.
But I think at a minimum, the language of the current regulations need to be clarified. Because what it says is, it's not recommended. Or what does it say?
Generally not
It's
allowed.
generally not allowed. But at the very last sentence says, needs approval of Commissioner's Court.
I would just put it
So
in
it's not
there.
prohibited.
It's not allowed.
Let me throw something out there, just for grins. Somewhere down the road, we're gonna be taking a dirt nap. And somewhere down the road, this will be a more urban setting. It might not be a municipality where this location is, and the properties will be tighter around it. At that point in time, you can see where there might be a necessity for a pumped detention because of the proximity of the homes being on smaller lots. And the urban sprawl has gone to the country, okay? Tarkington Prairie is no longer Tarkington Prairie. Tarkington Prairie is now an unincorporated city or settlement. But yet they have development here, just all next to each other, which is gonna happen. You can see it coming. At what point in time would you even consider it then? I mean, is it probably a good idea to look at this now? We don't have to say everybody can go do it, but we need to be thinking about it down the road.
I think at a minimum, you need to be thinking about the long-term effects of it.
Yeah.
Not the effects of which is questions you've already proposed. Who's responsible for it? How do we enforce their responsibility?
Yeah.
If they just go out of business or whatever, who then legally is.
Yeah, there's no way that we can ever get a guarantee for somebody to take responsibilities for these things, period. I don't care what scenario you throw out there, from HOA to a MUD district to the owner itself. Either of those can fail and be gone, and we're stuck with a pond that has no pumps. You know, so it's.
And correct me if I'm wrong, man, but these ponds are not in initial easement or right of way. They're not dedicated to the county.
Mhm.
So y'all don't even necessarily have the legal right
Right
to
to
go
go
on
on
there
it, yeah.
and check the pumps, right, without some, enforcement capability.
So if we leave the regs like they are right now, where case by case, we'll just have to re-look at this every time somebody comes in.
But I think it needs to be at least pre-approved, because what happens now
Yeah.
is the developer has a design engineer, they go through the entire process of developing
then we
a set
say
of
no.
plans.
I think
Then
that,
you say, no, we don't want, now they gotta go back to the drawing board and redo it.
yeah,
There needs to be some sort of pre-approval, let them explain for whatever reason why they want it. And if they can sell you on it, great. If not, and say, no, we don't want it. And then from there, they got to design it appropriately.
I'm sure y'all have already thought about this, and I'm sure y'all already have some kind of wording that we could change that reg to.
What we proposed so far was really if you would allow it. But it won't take us long to say just what kind of minimum changes need to be that really strengthens the language that says they're really not allowed. Or even if they are allowed, it needs some sort of pre-approval process before they submit.
Yeah, I would like,
plans of plan.
Yeah,
I would like to strengthen the language and definitely have the pre-approval. That way they don't go through all the engineering and stuff.
Right.
And then we don't do that.
We currently have.
They need to know it up front.
That are waiting on to submit their final plans with pump detention in place.
Yeah.
You've already denied one due to pump detention.
Yeah, you've got some waiting.
Some that have currently designed their detention to be pump detention. I guess they were thinking that this would be allowed or the rules changed. They've been holding off. So if the decision is to still not allow it, or at least without a pre-approval, then they're going to have to go back to the drawing board at this time and redesign their layout to only allow for gravity.
suppose they need to go back to the drawing board.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that's any of your concern, and that it should be. I'm just saying that there are some out there that are waiting on the outcome of this. Are you going to adopt new rules or not?
And I'll add one thing, the main reason an engineer would use pump detention is because there's a shallow outfall.
Yeah.
They don't have the depth. As development becomes more prevalent, usually you have improvements to the channels to get to that point, and the stuff is already deepened. Because you take advantage, you start at the downstream, work your way up, you daylight, you make your channel deeper. And by the time something gets developed, the receiving channel has been improved, A, for capacity, because there's more development, and B, the depth, and it's controlled and contained. So as more things get developed, usually the pump detention need goes away. So, but it's that first person that gets into Prairie that has
Yeah.
a 2-foot roadside ditch, and he's like, I got nowhere to go. I can't even put a 24-inch pipe in the ground and have cover on it. So I need to dig a hole that's 10 feet deep or 4 feet deep. And if I'm gonna go 4 feet, I might as well go 10 feet, put a pump in it and just suck all that water out and get it back in the roadside ditch. That's the nuance of a lot of pump detention, the reasoning. I think Harris County limits it with a gravity fed portion because they want it to where if the channel gets improved, usually the channel gets deepened from 4 feet to 8 feet, and their pond that was gravity at 4 feet pumped from 10 now only has a 2-foot bottom. And they can fill that in and make the whole thing gravity, the channel gets improved. So usually the progression is a pump most likely goes away as the development happens and the channels get improved. But that first person out there, it just sets up for a lot of maintenance headaches. And that's the reasoning for pumps most of the time.
But if they wanted to implement some sort of pre-approval, the developer has to come in and basically justify what they want.
Yes.
100% agree with that.
But what would the justification be? Would they have to show us that, hey, we just don't have the depth on the outfall?
Usually
We need to lower our drainage system or something to allow for a new subdivision to be, whether it's open ditch or some storm sewer. We need more outfall depth. We don't have that. We cannot develop the site with this outfall.
Usually the arguments from the review side of it is, can you go downstream and improve a channel? Maybe it's not yours, maybe it is yours, maybe it's public already. But if there's a channel that you're outfalling into, how far downstream do you need to go to make some improvements to daylight it and get some extra depth? And if that becomes such a long hurdle, then that becomes a valid discussion point. If one of the things I think other counties have done major thoroughfare plan for roads, they've done major thoroughfare plan for drainage. And to be fair and honest, that's what I'll be doing for y'all in about 6 months as part of the master plan. Identifying areas that don't have channels, identifying areas that don't have deep channels, identifying what needs to be done to make things ready, A, for future development, and B, problem areas already. So identifying depth is the first question.
Well, we know what the problem areas are
Yeah.
in the county anyway.
Yeah,
But my question would be, since you mentioned it, what's your anticipation on a study and a plan and the time that it might be delivered? Is this a 3 to 5 year, or is this a 2 to 3 year, or
I
what?
believe, and I was talking to Jessica on the way over here, I believe I have a good understanding of your existing conditions in about 2 years. And the first year that is survey.
Yeah.
We're redoing a whole benchmark leveling system, data, LiDAR, all the really good technology.
Well, I think we've ordered the LiDAR.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Okay.
HGAC is looking to fly that right now,
Yeah.
actually this month. But we have monumentation, we have terrestrial, we have bathymetry survey, we're doing a lot.
Yeah.
And that's about 18 months, but about 6 months into that, we'll get kicked off on our modeling. So about 2 years to have a really, really good understanding of everything in the county. And then maybe another year after that to get a really good game plan of potential improvements and problem areas and prioritization,
Yeah.
projects.
Okay.
So at this point, I think we probably ought to just not allow it until we get our final drainage plan.
Yep.
And then we can reevaluate it.
And one of the line items in the GLO's contract is a update to the drainage criteria or a creation of a drainage criteria manual, which would piggyback off the subdivision rules and regs.
Well, that's our
Piggyback
goal.
off your flood ordinances.
That's our goal.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we never had one. Nobody's ever,
Yep.
nobody ever
I'm
tackled
gonna
it.
get you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so if you go forward with this, you'd end up having a bait shop. That's it, pretty much.
You got a question back there?
Yeah, Scott?
Say something.
Sure.
Okay, so I've talked with Manuel and them on this subject. Okay, in August, Manuel was gonna take X-May Ranch to y'all. He brought it to y'all with, I'm assuming everything that we have done on X-May Ranch. We have a pump system in there. Okay, Manuel asked for a variance for mine. Is that correct? That was in August.
I remember presenting it to Commissioner's Court, but I don't remember what the variance was for.
It was for the pump.
Yeah, I think we have already allowed a variance.
I don't think you need a variance for a pump, because you just need commissioner court approval.
Correct.
The variance would be if pumps aren't allowed, you
Yeah.
say, give me a variance to allow it. But right now, they're not prohibited, they're just need permission.
Exactly. So
What, it was not,
We didn't object to the pumps. We recommended approval of the plat and plans with no objection to the pumps.
okay, that was in August. Which means my pump system and my plans were ready to go. All we needed was the county commissioner to approve that. Okay, and y'all tabled it. And then it's taken 6 months to get to this point. Okay, and the guidelines that we were going to use is, and you can, I'm not an engineer, but we were going to have a generator out there, a propane tank to, because in case the power went out on the two pumps, all our drainage is fine. We just have the two pumps, and then y'all brought up, okay, so we gotta do something with the maintaining. So we have an HOA set up in that development right now. We're finalizing all the documents through the attorney in Austin. So that's where we're at now on that.
At this point, if we've decided to not allow it, he wouldn't actually come under the new regulation. He would be still under the old one, or we
Yeah, I
would
would
have.
assume he would still be he would be grandfathered. He would be grandfathered.
This is
Yeah.
David's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the answer to your question is more than likely Commissioner's Court would approve
I mean,
the pump detention for you, but farther on, because basically you have one that has brought all this to our attention that it needs to be done. Yes. So,
I'm not mad at you.
But I guess when I was coming in here today, I'm not saying, okay, so we're gonna lay out these guidelines, because I understand y'all want somebody to maintain that. So, I mean, I have that solved today. Now, down the road, I don't know. I'm assuming my HOA is gonna be there from now on, the way I have it set up,
Mm-hmm.
but,
Well, that's an assumption.
well, I can't guarantee anything. You know, like, all I can do is what I can do. But, you know, until we reach 51%, I turn it over to the public, you know, to people who live there. I control that. So, but I guess I was coming in here thinking, okay, we're gonna get some guidelines from JOA, LJ.
LJ, yeah, LJ.
Okay, sorry about that. There's a real estate. That would say, okay, the county's gonna come out here and inspect this, let's say, every 6 months. They're gonna send me a bill for $250 or whatever it is, $500. Ready to pay that. I'm looking at all the details that we would have to put in either on the plat for maintenance for those pumps. That's how I'm looking.
I don't think in-house we even have a qualified person to do that.
I mean,
We would have to contract that out to LJA or someone like them to do it.
But you see, that's how I was coming in here today, thinking, we're gonna detail out what I have to put on my plat that will make Melinda happy as happy as I can make her.
Okay.
That doesn't sound good.
Yeah, we understand the predicament. You know, in that regard, you would call out an inspection, but you would, LJ would send us a bill, then we'd back bill
Yeah.
the POA or
Yeah.
HOA. That's,
So in
The
this
fair
case,
measure
this is
there.
what we're gonna have to do.
Yeah,
Now, that's the way I would do it,
Yeah.
even though I wouldn't want, I don't want to pay the bill, but
Yeah.
I understand how if those pumps aren't working, then the whole system's not working.
And time-wise, LJA, time-wise, what would be a good time? I mean, I'm sure bi-yearly, quarterly, to inspect these pumps, what would be your suggestion?
I'd say at a minimum annually. We had discussed
Annually,
this before
yeah,
at the previous
annually.
workshop and I think.
when we
Yeah.
discussed it, we said buy.
Yeah.
Yeah, then we
annually.
just said, you know, we said, maybe 5.
let me ask you, would this pump be akin to a grinder pump?
Trash pump.
Yeah.
Something you
All right.
set the lake
Yeah.
out with.
All right.
And it's usually, you know how big the pumps are? They 4-inch, 6 inches, 6 inch.
Okay.
So 6-inch pump.
Yeah.
I think it's a 15 horsepower pump.
And don't they have the controls where one of them will come on one time, one of them come on the other? And then if one pump fails, the other pump will take it, but a light comes on and let you know that it's,
Yeah, and they,
Yeah.
usually the pump settings are,
Yeah.
you know, you'll. set
Yeah, I think we found the
first one,
pump
the second one,
inspector.
Next
Yeah.
time is first, so you don't burn one and leave one.
yeah,
listed.
exactly.
Well,
Same way with site septic facilities.
well, Scott's project to be the guinea pig,
Yep,
you know, literally, I hate to say it that way, but that's what it would be.
I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
You are aware that the current set of regulations, which you said earlier that Scott's development is going to be grandfathered in. There are no set of regulations in place right now for pump detention. Right? All there is in the regs that even mentions pump detention is that it's generally not allowed
Yeah.
and or not recommended, but would be approved, but need approval by.
The only design criteria for pumping is, I think you have to have pumps and there has to be emergency overflow. There's nothing else in there about pump
Yeah,
detention.
there's,
Now,
nothing.
in the absence of those, in the absence of such criteria, we have been providing to developers additional stuff, which I think we did for XMA, and it is very similar to what we propose here. You know, the 1 acre foot per acre, all those other regulations that we're proposing. I believe we did ask them to abide by those, and Scott did say they will, but they're not in your regulations, and they're not enforceable because they're not in your regulations.
Well,
They're
and
just something that we, as your engineer, asked them to do.
they're not enforceable, but in the percent you say, but for us to approve it, then they've got to meet those deals. Otherwise, we're not
They're
gonna,
in a place for them to.
Huh?
I'm saying those were all recommendations,
Yeah, just
Yeah.
but they're not in your regulations.
okay, they're not in the regulations, but we're not required to approve it.
No,
Right?
you're not.
Okay, so if he says, with this deal, okay, do you meet their recommendations? If they say, yeah. Then, okay, then we'll consider it then. If they don't meet
I
your,
just want to make sure y'all are aware that they're not in your regs.
yeah,
He would be, yeah.
but,
Getting approval on just what we recommended.
if we're gonna prohibit it from now on,
Mhm.
then if we were gonna allow it on a certain basis, then we need the regulation, but right now I don't know that you've got the regulations. If he come up, on this particular deal, he's, asking us to do it. If they meet your recommendations and, that'd be part of his argument for us to,
Your approval could be predicated on meeting your requirements. Requirements can be separate from regulations.
yeah, that's what I'm
There's
talking,
a way to write your approval
yeah.
in accordance or in line with these site-specific requirements, X, Y, Z.
And then in the process, we also need to change our regulations to prevent this from happening again.
Well, what our regulations already does that.
That's, your regulations basically are a little vague. It says it's
Okay.
not recommended, but it doesn't prohibit them from doing it.
Okay, let's do
We're
that.
the only ones who could prohibit them by not approving it.
Okay, well, we need to strengthen our regulations. And, do the guidelines that you said, what'd you call it? Requirement.
Again, I'm an engineer, not a legal lawyer, so.
Yeah,
But
but,
I think you can fall back on that as a.
you can write these requirements up and we can give them to him and say, if you meet these requirements, then
You can have a pump to ten.
All right, in this regard, then we could possibly allow this one to slither through. But put like a moratorium on any more of them until we get the study and the plan complete for the entire county.
That's a very.
are we gonna have any legal problems with doing it this way?
There's potential for issues.
What now?
There's potential for issues, sure. I think that in order to enforce it might be an issue. It might be something that we have to agree to with the developer upfront, contractually.
No, I'm worried about what is it gonna cause any legal problems with developers in the future because we allowed this time. And we're changing our regulations.
Through your setting the precedent, do I think that necessarily opens us up to liability? It depends.
But we're strengthening our regulations. We're changing the regulations. And we're only doing this because he's already in the process under the old regulations.
Yeah, well, I want to give you a specific example. XMA has presented to court.
Yeah.
LJ has approved their plans
Mhm.
and presented to court with no objections, final plat, final plans. It was then tabled by y'all
Mhm.
for further discussion.
Yeah.
We have others waiting in the wings, final plans that haven't been presented to y'all yet. So always to tell them now, no.
Are these pump detention projects?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jesus, okay.
How many you got there?
I know
At least one more.
at least a
I think it's the same, three.
It is
That same location,
same precinct.
same precinct.
I mean,
Damn, David.
I get everything, though.
Man,
you have to.
Is that the one on ten
Deny
ten?
or reject
Scott?
a pump detention plan.
Is that the
You're
other
gonna
one?
need
Let's pick it up on 10-10.
stages of doing so,
Yeah, just because you want more land to sell doesn't mean you need a pump detention.
Wait, are you
Yeah, but
saying
we
they
have to have-
deny it
Yes,
They need a
exactly.
reason?
Yes.
Exactly. There's gonna be.
as opposed to the developer having to have a reason to implement, even though it's not necessarily allowed?
I think if you strengthen the regs, and keep them up and you know, there's certain criteria. And I don't know anything about that.
Well,
Just talking.
So we can just
we won't
go
look
case by
potentially
case.
Open us up to liability here.
That's your point.
Possibly be, would we have to do contract with them, with estimate because they're already
Maybe,
basically,
maybe.
so maybe we would have to think about a contract with them.
I think it'd be with the, some sort of.
Yeah, I think it will be to
Third party.
With the HOA.
Yeah,
Third party
not
HOA.
developer
Only
themselves,
for-
but the
for the
HOA.
future, yeah.
So, but then if you do that, again, you.
Then everybody, yeah, then you're opening
open it
yourself
up.
to.
You're gonna have every developer say, well, I've got an HOA, why can't I do it
Yeah.
here? Do I necessarily think that there's legal issues? I think it's just gonna be a precedent that's set for the court. I think you're gonna need to have people come forward and say, well, you allowed it here, you did this here, why not?
Why
me?
not?
And, you know, you do have the authority to say no as a voting governing body, but I think that you're, you know, in order to do so, you're gonna have to have good legitimate reason.
Yeah.
And whether that's, they're not up to specs, if you beef up the regs, you know, maybe they're not up to a particular spec, but I can guarantee you that if a developer comes to you and they want to pump attention, they're going to have already talked to LJA, they're gonna know their regs and try to get it up to whatever specifications are required.
Under the current regs, there's nothing in there about maintenance, who's responsible for pump
No,
attention.
no.
That's right.
And it just gives almost blanket authority to the commissioner's court to
Just say.
approve it or not.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so basically, it's just, you know, yeah.
That's the part of the regs we need to change.
You don't have to approve
So
that.
that's, I want to make sure is if it's not exiting, do they then have to allow the Donato?
I don't think there's anything that says they have to allow them. I just think that you're probably gonna get some flack.
Well,
Uh,
now, if we've got our deal set up, so we don't allow pump stations. Okay. But we've got two, this one and one more already in the process under the old regulations where they're at.
Yeah.
So if we deal with them on a basis, okay, you meet our criteria that they set for when they ask us to approve it, we could approve those two because they're in the deal. But that wouldn't, if we change the regulation down and say, we're not going to allow this anymore.
You could consider those two long-term pilot projects to see
Yeah.
how they go.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and if they don't work, you can base decisions
Base your
in the
denial.
future on the fact that.
Yeah,
those Pilot.
And I like that terminology. We're gonna see how these things work. If they weren't good, then we can come back and we can amend our deal, so allow them again. But right now, until we get better information and.
But here's another thing, from my standpoint as a developer, if I wasn't this far with this, if I knew that y'all weren't gonna allow pumps, I would figure something else out.
Yeah,
I'm just-
and most,
Matter of fact, on Moss Ranch, that y'all approved, we had a pump in that original one, right?
Right.
And then we figured out how to get more volume by, we went down 1 foot, it dropped the line 1 foot, and it worked that way. Then, I think that's right.
Yeah.
So we made that one work, so we wouldn't be held up,
yeah,
because I've worked on this one longer than I have Moss Ranch. I'm just saying, a developer's gonna figure it out if you tell them they can't do it. I've just spent a ton of money to this point, to get it to this point, and asking me to change my whole structure at this point would be a nightmare.
Like I
It
said,
sounds like you're considered two options, either strengthening the regs to make sure it's clear that it's prohibited, or
Correct.
strengthening the regs to say it needs pre-approval. To let them come to you and say, can we do it? Have them justify why they need it. You can tell them yay or nay at that point, and then let them proceed accordingly with the design. Rather than, right now, there's no way to know for XMA or Venado whether you're gonna allow it or not. So they're proceeding with plans that it is allowed. And if you tell them no, now they're gonna go back.
You want to go with the no without pre-approval.
Right now,
From
right
this
now, I would
point-
just
from
like
this
to,
point
I would
on.
like to cut it off right now, you know.
You have to put it off until the drainage criteria.
Until we evaluate how these are working.
But the two that's prior to this decision that we can't legally make right now, go ahead and use as a pilot program
Yeah,
we can
But
all
we-
look back on and say, well, this didn't.
Well, I
this
suspect
didn't work.
that Scott's just waiting
Yeah,
for
yeah.
for the word to say, have this, have Melinda put it back on the agenda for y'all to accept XMA. Because he's probably chomping at the bit
Correct.
to go to construction.
With the HOA and the
Right.
criteria that they have already set down
Exactly.
for him to go by.
We
Yeah.
just need to,
And William even said with,
Leon, you got something?
requirement.
the.
Yeah,
requirement.
basically says that.
You were gonna add,
They're also adhering
what do
to
you, oh,
our recommended
Right,
regulations that aren't necessarily.
Yes,
So-
we need to fine tune what we're going.
until our
We
our
can't
plan
do-
is finalized, until our
Yes.
drainage plan has been. So by the time the drainage plan is finished and completed and accepted, we should have some knowledge on the
Correct.
two that are already
Yeah.
going to be accepted. Whether they'll work in the county.
So I think for his projects, my understanding is the approval by the commissioners board is going to have some language or verbiage that will be a requirement as part of the contract
Right.
per se, that'll be on your plat, so it's documented, tied to the project.
Right,
HOA has some sort of interlocal third party with the county. And I think those get tied to that project. It effectively parrots the criteria that you're recommending. And then the updated verbiage of the actual criteria is something along the lines of projects with pump convention are generally not allowed and require pre-approval by consulting, by the county prior to initial design, if you want to incorporate it, blah, blah, blah. If you want design criteria will be updated as part of the master plan, pending or whatever, or be reevaluated as part of the updated criteria manual,
Okay,
something along those lines.
Kind of like we did on Moss Ranch on that drain, where we took it off of y'all, and we're gonna mow and upkeep
Yeah.
that.
yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So that's what we put that on the plat.
Okay. Well, we can't make any decisions today anyway. We're just a workshop only.
Not to put a monkey wrench, but another option, and I may bite my tongue if y'all want me to.
By all means, throw a monkey wrench.
I've seen other entities have bonds of some sort where a developer that wants to do a pump detention that has long-term maintenance issues puts up a bond of some sort that will fund 10 years of maintenance or something like that. There's a fee,
Mhm.
something that
yeah,
gives them ownership and buy-in that you never call upon until if they flake out, close shop and run away,
Mhm.
and the HOA fails to do it, you have this bond. It's not, and I don't know how bonds work. I don't know how that legal stuff.
Oh, Catherine knows all about bonds. Yeah.
Yeah, and I assume, I know like a contract bonds is usually not worth the money to go get a payment bond or a
right.
performance bond.
Yeah.
I mean, they're paper, but you normally can get negotiated out of those things before you even try to call one. So a thought that came up, I've seen it done other places, and it more or less is to make them buy in and have ownership.
Yeah.
More than the actual hammer of the bond. But as a thought,
Well, the only thing that we ever worry about is an HOA or a POA disappearing.
yeah, it's all in.
There's always that opportunity.
What about cities? I mean, I assume, but again, as I said earlier, most of the time, if you get into a city system, you have depth. You have 6-8 feet of depth. And
Mhm.
I think as you alluded to, a foot or two makes a huge difference in your drainage and your retention. If you're at 2 to 3 feet, you kind of get, if you're at 4 to 5, you can make things work. If you're over 6 feet of available depth at the outfall, no problem. I can make anything work with that.
Mhm.
So if you're in that 3 to 4 foot range, you're kind of in a, well, a pump really does make sense because I'm giving up half my property for a pond that's only 3 feet or 2 feet, you got the slope of the pipe and the outfall. You lose ground real quick. You only go 2 feet just on your piping.
Careful saying you can make anything work, because I've got a young fellow that made a statement that Hurricane Harvey was a low impact rain.
Yeah.
Low impact rainfall with a long intensity duration. Just back and worse.
They didn't bother to put that into the statement.
And I will say something, comment. If we put more lots on the ground, and I'm not qualifying that, but we put more lots on the ground, it is a benefit to the county because they get taxed revenue.
Well,
So if I put 3 more lots, I'm just saying from a development standpoint.
yeah.
If I put 3 lots on the ground, I got a $400,000 house. And y'all are getting 3.2 million, I mean, maybe that's a lot value. So there is a benefit to the county, to put more lots.
As long as you call David out of bed to come fix it, I'm good. Good to go.
Yeah, you guys don't want to
Well, we ain't there yet, but we're getting there. Okay. But we have some little direction better.
Yeah, what we can do is we can prepare, 2 different options, either, I'll show y'all what it would take to, still give developers option, either seek approval, pre-approval, or I'll give you another option if you want to implement that one that says, basically, we'll put a moratorium on pump detention and
Well,
such time in the future that y'all may allow.
Look at it right now, we're at the grandfather point, and anything beyond the grandfather point that's new is going to be looking at the moratorium aspect.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
I think
Because I want to see this plan finished, and I don't care if it takes you 5 years.
Right.
I'd hope to be around here to see it when it's done, but the main thing is get everybody to hold hands and sing Kumbaya on drainage, because it's never been done.
Never.
Yeah. Excited.
Yeah, I am. I really am.
I've spent the last 2 days digging through those rivers and crossings. And
Well, it took 7 years to get to this point.
Yes.
I had blonde hair when it started. Okay, and a lot more of it.
I get it for that.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm pretty good now. Y'all got anything else?
now,
Bruce had hair back when we started.
I know.
Greg wasn't using hearing aids.
Sir?
Huh?
I think we've just about beat this as much as.
All right.
Good.
Leon, you got anything else?
Nothing else.
Okay.
Aye.
All right, let's call this we're done.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
You very much.